Hello, everybody. It is I'm So Cutie, and I'm bringing you probably one of my most ambitious projects yet. It's actually my predictions for DLC number 2, DLC Milwaukee, the DLC that I'll be attending. I'm putting out all the lists and the conversions of the Bologna event, and then the expected distribution of this further event. These are genuinely honest. There is very slight bias towards a couple of decks, but when it comes to the competitive metagame of Disney Lorcana, I do believe that there is a lot of flexibility to it. I believe that it is due to player inability to change decks at this point in time. But I do believe that everything that I give you is pretty straight up. The conversion ratios were made by me. I put the work in to really look at the distribution and really understand. And let's just get right into it. So this one is going to be just a little bit more nitty gritty, but I am going to go through the list and just my genuine thoughts of everything going on. So we are looking at day 1 on the top here, the top half, and then day 2 on the bottom. I went ahead and did the conversion ratios for the top 5 represented decks, and dogs have a 28% conversion ratio, which means that almost basically 1 in every 4, if you're being modest, 1 in every 4 people who played dogs got into the day 2 cut, which is just pretty insane. And then 2 dogs in general made top cut of top 8, not top 32. Top 32 numbers I actually didn't see fully. I'm really just focusing on the top 8 and the overall Swiss. And 4th represented was the Amethyst Steel, which was actually pretty weird to me. I do believe that Amethyst Steel has one of the most favorable spreads into everything, but it only had a conversion ratio of 14.8. I do believe, though, that this is due to Amethyst Sapphire being in such large amounts. The likelihood that Amethyst Steel got kicked out by Blurple in the early rounds of Swiss is just super high, and I really do dislike that because it just meant that further Swiss went, Green Blue, Dogs, and Amber Steel just had very skewed numbers at winning more. But for that same reason, this was the correct event to play these numbers. Conversion ratios, though, are pretty low all around, besides Dogs and Amber Steel. Again, they're techier than aggro. They're not aggro. They're able to get through board states that are just so complicated, and they use resources so efficiently to get through bad situations, and they're ultimately the 2 decks that basically shut Blurple out of any chances of making it. I'm pretty sure in the top 32 we only saw 2 Blurples, maybe even 3 Blurples. In my opinion, Blurple really is not all that. It just can't maneuver well if it doesn't draw well, and I dislike decks that need the perfect 7 to be unfavorable matchups. It's just very demanding, and this is what I expect for DLC Milwaukee. So, even though I say Blurple isn't really the deck to be, or the deck to beat, it is still going to be the most represented deck in the room. Especially in the American meta, players just take data from overseas or past events and kind of just copy and paste that. If Blurple won DLC Bologna, and Blurple was the number 1 in Swiss, and Blurple was the number 1 represented deck in the format, then people are going to play Blurple. There's going to be a lot of people that are very bad at Blurple that are playing Blurple, and that's just very unfortunate. I do still think to see about 600 to 700 players on Blurple, which is very disheartening. Honestly, one, for the opportunity of that player to play in the tournament, you're going to be playing mirrors that you're inexperienced with, and you're going to be playing mirrors almost all day, and then you'll probably just lose to a spike in Amber Steel and Dogs. So furthermore, Purple Steel, I do actually expect to grow a lot. Purple Steel showed that it can do everything and anything in the top cut. In all the featured matches that I watched, Purple Steel was just a monster. There's just too much stuff that Purple Steel can do that people don't fully understand yet. But with Purple Steel getting second at DLC Bologna, I do actually think it's going to hit a crazy spike in popularity. I mean, Purple Steel is one of the, if not probably the best deck in format. In my genuine opinion, the thing is for best deck in format for me, it's just the deck that can basically beat everything. And Purple Steel can beat everything. I genuinely think that Purple Steel can beat everything with a standard 1 through 4 hand. And it's just pretty crazy. And then I do see dogs, and I really want dogs to spike all the way to number 3, most represented deck. Dogs is just one of the most competitive aggro decks there is. The complexity of dogs is actually really there, and it really, really has a giant skill expression when it comes to exerting to quest or going wider and setting up Tianas now and the big tramp. There's just a lot of moving parts, but dogs has just a insane matchup spread similar to that of Amethyst Steel to almost every deck in the format, besides Amethyst Steel itself, right? The thing is, that one becomes a lot trickier, but with them putting in Tiana, it's just so insane that Tiana can shut out a challenging deck like that. The only real out that Amethyst Steel has is pulling double strengths. Otherwise, they're kind of out of luck. I do genuinely believe that dogs should be the number 3 represented deck in the format to make the healthiest spread of day 2. I don't think the conversion ratios would be as high as 28. It definitely has the possibility to, especially with my prediction of 700 Blurple players. But there's obviously just the RNG of mirror matches or just all the Amethyst Steel through your Swiss rounds. And that happens. And, that sucks. But I can't preach enough. I really can't preach enough that dogs is pretty legit. And I really think that dogs will probably blow out Swiss this time. It's probably my most feared deck in Swiss. I genuinely have been playing it a lot, and I really want to play it for this DLC. But mirrors are very, very gruesome, and I don't know yet. But it is very good. Green-blue actually does have a pretty favorable matchup. Green-blue and Amber Steel are actually kind of interchangeable here. I do believe that they'll probably be around the 300 mark. These numbers do add up to about 1990, by the way. I do expect just a little bit more variance with Blue Steel or Red Steel, just because they did show in the first spread of Swiss over here. Obviously, there's just miscellaneous decks that show up, and that just happens. And then Green Steel did do really good. So in this one, Emerald Steel was only at about probably 40 players. I do expect it to jump up to the hundreds. It's just an aggro deck, similar to Dogs and Amber Steel. It doesn't have as much utility, but it does actually take even more advantage of challenging decks, which again are Blurple and Amethyst Steel. Chromicon, Fred, Merfolk, Cannons, Doc. There's a lot of cards that benefit off each other and benefit off the interactions that Purple is forced into. I do think that Emerald Steel is like a fan favorite color combination right now, and I do think it will hit the hundreds. So yeah, this is my expected distribution and genuine conversion ratios. I don't think that Blurple is the best deck in format, but yeah. I think I really give it to one of these two decks. I give it to Purple Steel or Dogs, 100%. So, going into the number 1 list of DLC Bologna. This deck is super fun. I love Rafiki over the Royal Octopus. I don't necessarily like the Ursula. I would really want to see the finals. I have not seen the best of 5 finals. Everything is pretty cookie cutter, and I love the Dig a Little Deeper. I really do. I was testing with it actually during set champs and just a little bit before. I do think it's a really good card and honestly super solid. I probably bet that this player keeps it or even bumps it into the slot of 2nd star. OJ is the 9th ramp. It's just insurance. That's fine. I don't mind it. TikTok Ursula counts. I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't love it. Magical Maneuvers over the Hypnotic slot, I don't necessarily like, especially since you're running Iago. You understand how Iago works. Magical Maneuvers is just very counterintuitive if you're going to just be using it to answer Iago. You don't have a lot of Iago answers, and in this deck, you kind of just get messed up by Iago pretty hard, unless you're into the Unknowning it, and then they just get to go into TikTok. Finders Keepers is actually a very good card. I was thinking about slotting it at like 1 or 2 during when I was testing, but it just doesn't make enough sense unless the other player clogs a turn really hard, like if they're not able to like Elsa or Bell in the mirrors. Usually every other matchup though, you're kind of just struggling to keep up. It's kind of like Ruby Sapphire. You kind of have to control the whole board before you start snowballing. It just kind of happens. Overall, the list is crazy. The list is pretty good. I love all the counts. Biggest thing for me is this Iago. Iago going up to 4 and Iago being at 4 in the winning list is actually a huge precursor for us seeing Iago for the next month of the meta. I do believe that people will be on 4 Iago. I believe that Iago at 4 is correct. I believe that Iago at 4 is meta defining. If you're not able to answer Iago, Iago will eat your board every single time. For any matchup spread, for any archetype that you are running, Iago will eat your board. So decks need to tech Iago out. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten by the board. Again, this is information that I find genuinely, like, true. So, for example, like, if this guy had a Hypnotic and Maneuvers, right? And this whole event concluded, and he knows that everybody's going to be on Iago, I would take that extra step in finding the spots to put Hypnotic at 4 and Magical Maneuvers at 2. Because now you have 6 cards to answer the Iago, because if Iago goes down and everybody is on Iago, you need to answer Iago. And that's genuine. Like, this one slot is actually meta defining for the next month. And if you're going to be playing at Swiss and DLC Milwaukee, if you get a Iago dropped on you and you don't have an answer, you're going to be losing that game, and you're going to be blaming yourself because you don't understand why people are playing Iago. And that's a genuine mistake on your part, and you need to be able to answer this curve almost every single time. And there just has to be something in place. Amethyst Steel is also a deck that I've been playing it a lot. I have. It was definitely the deck that I wanted to be the deck that I played at Set Champs, that I played at DLC Milwaukee. The thing is that it's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of weird counts, and it's a lot of moving parts. I really enjoyed this list on the right. It is closer to what I was playing. White Rose and Cobra put so much pressure on the board, and I believe that Nick Pham was probably more favorable into almost every Blurple and Green Blue matchup that he hit. He probably had a very favorable time in Swiss. Calhoun in general is just a card that destroys dogs as well, especially if dogs cannot, exert it or scrump, because obviously nobody was on scrump. List on the left, though, obviously they just have this. This is basically just playing 3 Jafar. Don't worry about the 1 and 2s. Only 2 Rose, and this is because he was trying to fit in this Yzma and this Hypnotic, which again, he was number 2. He had answers for when people had Vanish characters, which honestly probably was the defining factor in his performance being that much better than this player. Obviously, they both made top 8, but this player got to sneak through. And I believe he was a higher seed overall, too. I'm not sure. They might have had a mirror, actually. But I'm not sure. Again, it's just accessibility. Like having counts in the deck to have more accessibility is just crazy, right? This deck is basically 1 for 1, except the 1 count here, 1 count there, no Pete, Yzma 1 count, 2 count, and then Hypnotic. And then obviously this guy opts for Happy, just to have a more consistent Dumbo over the Palace Guard. Now we do have the number 1 Amber Steel. Not number 1. He was like, I don't know. He was like 6th, I think. I don't know. Again, you see, very standard, very Skylar kind of list. He does actually put in Calhoun. That is correct, especially with dogs being around. Dogs cannot get rid of Calhoun. And Rhino also makes it favorable enough so that Calhoun can trade into other Calhouns without getting popped. Same thing with Penny. So Penny and Rhino being there for the Calhoun math is pretty huge. Overall, the list is, pretty cookie cutter. It's standard. The only thing that is spicy is the world's greatest. This is probably just because he was scared of the big Clarabelle. And big Clarabelle kind of setting up the Under the Sea for further turns. So he was definitely more into grindier matches as a player. He probably was out of his element playing this deck. I don't really see the use of World Greatest. Besides that Clarabelle, besides like Shark. There's not a lot of 5 statted characters this meta. Maybe Pluto. Pluto and Mirrors, actually. Pluto and Mirrors would have been the answer, right? Yeah. And Scar. There's actually a lot of applicability. Atuov, it is a non-character though, and if you draw it, then you're kind of just forced to ink it and have no other character. That sucks just a little bit, but again, the list is pretty good. Amber Steel is not gonna deviate as much as I think within the next month. This list is just solid. It's either you high roll or you don't, and then you just play to your outs when you can play to your outs. Overall, pretty good though. Nothing noteworthy. This is probably the spiciest list of the entire weekend. Number 4 or number 3, number 4 and 3 basically same thing, and top cut after the conclusion of the tournament. Super good deck. Everything was really good. Everything was pretty cool. The only thing that looked clunky during his matches were this Luis and this Heathcliff. It seemed to be ink a lot of times, and it seemed to be like things that he didn't really want to put down. Everything else is pretty solid, and this player knew what he was doing. He was filtering a lot for this Kramakan in the dock. Having redundancy of Mulan and Bobby is basically like playing Tipo and Sail. Basically guarantees you to find the pieces that you need. Super solid player. I mean, this deck is what it is, right? It's aggro. It's techie with the control at the top end. It's to lock it out, to win it all, to hit little holes, not let them shift, finish off the Calhoun, Kramakans. Yeah. I mean, as fancy as it is to see it, it's not actually that crazy. I made a list similar to this actually when I made my green steel, or no, not my green steel video, but my Kramakan video, saying that this deck could run 4 Kramakan. Similar to him though, I did run 1 filtering card, not the redundant 8, so that was a little bit bad by me. But again, having characters that demand challenges in this meta is just crazy. I'm surprised that people don't play Merfolk. I think Merfolk is probably one of the best cards in the format, and nobody plays him. So I mean, green in general is pretty weak this format. So I do understand that, but Merfolk is pretty legit. I really think that Merfolk is huge. I think that Fred will likely go up in popularity as well. Fred did milk him a lot of lore in a lot of the matches that I watched. I do think that this deck is going to become very popular. If Blurple does not hit a 1-drop, the likelihood that you're pushing 8 lore is extremely high, and if one of those characters is Fred, you're going to be going to 10 or 12 almost immediately, just because it could not answer it on first exertion, which is huge. So this deck is meant to be Blurple, and if 700 American scrubs play Blurple just to get like ran by this deck, that's just on you. You have to understand what is coming into this meta. You have to understand what is popular. You have to understand that even though this deck only showed up at 36 players at different archetypes in this event, this is like one of the most sought after decks at the moment. Like, people enjoy this deck. I see it in Masters almost all the time now. Like, this deck is here. There's going to be a spike in this deck specifically with very small tech cards. And you will run into it in Swiss. You will, 100%. And now, finally, I believe we have our doggies. Honestly, my personal favorite. I really think that dogs are just a super good deck. I really do. I mean, it's just Amber Steel, but now you have the option to board wipe. You're just an aggro deck. You're an aggro deck that can self-sustain. Lilo is just crazy. Bobby, Lilo, Tiana. I mean, this deck is so good. I don't know why I show so much bias to it, honestly. I don't have any like personal experience on it in like terms of like winning a huge event on it or anything. The deck, I played it for a handful of times. I played it for a while in like, I think it was like platinum to diamond, and it was always rewarding. It was always rewarding because you always had something to do something, and when the pieces all fit, you're basically just like a Diablo high roll, and like there's no way to stop you at one point in the game. The only differences here are the tramp slot for the Jim Deere. They're both sharing the Merryweather. Pluto's at 4. This one did get a higher seed, I think, after conclusion. They might have actually both ended in top cut because of open list, but yeah, Jim Deere Gym Deer is nuts. I do enjoy this. The only thing that I would like to see in these lists is probably the 3-drop lady. The only reason why I say that is because you're running like the Pluto, especially in like a list like this. Like Pluto into lady into Gym Deer is a lot of pressure on board, and then the following turn you can play this big tramp and then have a bodyguard, have a 3 cost, and have that. Obviously though, it's probably like Pluto Aurora into Tiana, and if you don't have Tiana, it's probably just like 1-drops and then the Pluto trigger to get the tramp anyways on 3, so you probably don't exert. But again, like I'm displaying now, like this deck is so flexible in the way that it's going to approach the game. And I just enjoy that in decks in general. That is all the decks. These are my decks to beat 100%. These are the decks that I would probably be playing. I think these are the decks that are going to dominate the top cut. When they cut to top 32, I believe these are going to be like the 3 surviving decks. I do expect to see probably maybe like 2 or 3 Amber Steels, probably a Green Blue, probably a Green Steel. But again, with Green Steel being popular and the list being known, it is a little bit easier to get through it just because you know what might happen. I've also seen people playing Wasabi and Benja, so that is really weird. But it's happening, so you know it's happening. These are my decks to beat. These are my decks to play, honestly. As much as I preach that Blurple is not it, people will be on it, and because people are on it, you can lose to dogs. But because people are on it, you can also play Blurple. Because if you just play mirrors all day, you're going to have a very, very lucky Swiss. Again, though, thank you guys very much. This one was a little bit more nitty-gritty, more kind of just internal thoughts, even just for myself or my teammates to kind of think about it and reflect. The meta is going to change. Just one more time. It's going to change. You have to be prepared for the spread. You have to be prepared for the variables that are coming up, and there is hidden things in these lists that are going to become more popular that you have to be teched for, otherwise you're going to get scrubbed out of Swiss very hard. Testing is going well. I've set champs. I do have one first place list that I want to post. It is Ruby Amethyst. It's going to be an amazing video, but again, thank you guys very much for sitting with me through this, and give me your thoughts on the meta. See you guys.